qualifying on Saturday. So Zanardi starts on the second row, just behind the two Pac West cars of Maurizio Gugelmin and Marc Blundell, and alongside Alex Zanardi will be Dario Franchitti, still looking for the first opportunity to score some really good points in the series this year.
Actually, I think we're going to have a single file start for this race because of the wet conditions on the track. We've had this long delay, but finally we're going to go racing. But I think Wally Dallenbach, the kart chief steward, has elected to go for the single file start of this race. So rather than lining up side by side as they come out of turn 14 and up the front straightaway, they will be single file.
There's a look at the track, and you can see with 14 turns spread over 4 miles, this is a real challenging circuit. And in these tricky conditions, it's still wet on the circuit. They're going to have a lot to think about. Quite a few overtaking opportunities, but there's an awful lot of opportunities to fall off the track as well, as we saw in the warm-up this morning. And it's just a question as to whether they're going to be able to stay on in the early stages. All of them are on wet tyres. It has been declared a wet start, so they have to have wet tyres on. They're not allowed to switch to slicks until after the green flag has flown. And the big question mark, of course, is the battle between Goodyear and Firestone. We've seen Firestone's advantage in the wet in Portland, but Goodyear perhaps have a more durable tyre, and with the track likely to dry out as we go through this race, that could be crucial for Gilles de Ferran here, who's one of the top Goodyear runners on the grid here today. Gilles de Ferran, in fact, in 7th place. Let's take a look at the grid then. Maurizio Gugelmin on pole for the second time this year in his 4th full season in America, alongside twice winner Marc Blundell. Alex Zanardi is alongside Dario Franchitti. Franchitti again qualifying well, as he did in Mid-Ohio last week. Michael Andretti and Scott Pruitt making it an All-American drivers' 3rd row to the grid, but remember, as we said, they're starting in single file. Gilles de Ferran 7th, and Brian Herter, the pole sitter in Mid-Ohio, will start in 8th position. Behind those two, Raoul Boesel and Greg Moore. Boesel very fast in Saturday morning practice, as was Scott Pruitt, so watch out for him climbing up through the field. Greg Moore also looking for a good result here. Bobby Rahal finished 3rd last week in Mid-Ohio. Guelta Sales again qualifying very well in the Davis racing car on a much restricted budget compared to the likes of Jimmy Vasser and Al Unser Jr., who are 13th and 14th as reigning champion and former champion. Paul Tracy, though, the former points leader, he's down in 15th position to start this race, and Andre Ribeiro will be just behind him, with Parker Johnston and Christian Fittipaldi next up. Two youngsters, Michel Jourdain Jr. and Patrick Carpentier, would have been sharing row 10, but they'll line up at 9 astern. Then Fangio, fastest of the Toyota runners in qualifying, ahead of Adrian Fernandez with the Honda-powered Lola. Behind Fernandez is the next of the Toyota cars. Max Papis is alongside Richie Hearn, the young American, also driving the Lola chassis, but this time with a Ford Cosworth engine. And behind these two, PJ Jones and Arndt Meyer share the penultimate row of the grid. The last two qualifiers for this race, Hiro Matsushita in the Panasonic car and Charlie Neerberg, who will make it onto the final row, the final starting position, although he damaged his car, didn't manage to do a time in qualifying as a result of an accident on Friday morning. So there, the overhead view, and it's great to see the helicopters managed to get up there, because the cloud earlier really meant that the helicopter wasn't able to take its place over the start-finish straight. And as you can see, the cars being led round, tremendous sight. Maurizio Gugelmin, the top man there, with Marc Blundell, and Pac West so far this weekend looking very, very good.
Tremendous effort by the Pac West Racing Group, monopolising the front row of the grid. It's actually the first time that has been achieved since just over 1 year ago, when Target Chip Ganassi Racing claimed the first 2 positions at Mid-Ohio. So this Pac West team really has done a fantastic job this year. They've been contenders in the past, but not regular contenders, and that's the difference this year. They've been very, very strong just about every single track we've been to.
Now, Maurizio Gugelmin, renowned for his skill in the wet as well, always the same in Formula 1 days. He's a very smooth driver, and that's going to suit him well, these sort of conditions. Marc Blundell, from his Formula 1 experience. You've got Zanardi, you've got Franchitti up there. Michael Andretti, of course, is always a hard charger, isn't he? I mean, he has just as much wet driving talent as any of these other European bred drivers.
Very much so, and his teammate Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi's way back in 18th position. He had an off during that Friday qualifying session, that all-important single qualifying session on Friday, so he's way back on the grid. But he, over the last couple of years, has been the master in the wet. Some sensational drives by the young Brazilian, and it's going to be interesting to see how he can charge up through this field in the early stages.
So Franchitti has had a little bit of experience in the wet, remember, that Portland race, where he ran very competitively, but in the end there was contact between himself and Al Unser Jr., so that was slightly unfortunate. But Franchitti starting in 4th place, and he'll have Michael Andretti right behind him when the race goes green. The rest of the field filing around. Greg Moore, you can see further down the field than perhaps we would have expected, but they're the two Penske's, and that's one of the key stories. Remember, they're on the Goodyear tyre, which we might expect to be a little more durable. Goodyear actually have changed their wet tyre, haven't they, Jeremy, since that Portland race where Firestone seemed to have the edge.
It's a new rear tyre. I gather the fronts are the same as before, but the rear tyre has been modified and improved to gain more traction under acceleration out of the corners, obviously, is the key there. And, you know, it's not terribly wet now. The track is beginning to dry. The rain ceased probably about 45 minutes ago. There's a little bit of a breeze. It's not very warm, but certainly the track is drying. And it's going to be interesting to see over the first few laps of the race how that changes.
The car's coming down through the hurry down section and then through the left-hander at the bottom of the hill. This is into the carousel, a corner we were mentioning in the qualifying show. This is a very fast corner, taken in 5th gear and dropping downhill as they accelerate onto the back straight. There you can see the pit window, 19 to 21 laps. Let's come up a bit because it's damp. That does help them in terms of the fuel here, because they would have been extremely tight on fuel. And in fact, they were saying more likely to have made 3 stops if it had been dry.
Yeah, these cars, if everything goes their way, they can just about get 2 miles to the gallon. Well, this is a 4-mile racetrack, so therefore they can do maybe 17 laps on a tank full of fuel. We have 35 gallons on board, so with it being that longer racetrack, it means that the fuel window is awfully tight. 34 miles they can probably do, 17 laps. Well, so 17 laps is about what they can do comfortably, and that is what they need to get as an absolute minimum to get to the end of this race on 2 stops.
So it's a tight track on fuel. We've seen people running out of fuel on the closing stages of this race before. Michael Andretti did it back in 1989, virtually on the last corner, and lost his first opportunity for a win here, but he has won here 3 times, matching his father Mario and Emerson Fittipaldi, all 3 times winners on this Road America circuit. But we are now getting ready for the start of the Texaco Javelin 200. It's been a long wait, but let's hope it's been worth the wait, because we are in for a very, very exciting afternoon racing. Maurizio Gugelmin leads them up the hill towards the start gantry. The green flag flies, and Maurizio Gugelmin heads them down towards turn number 1 with teammate Mark Blundell right behind him. And both of these Pac West drivers will be anxious not to get into any sort of trouble. You're watching from Michael Andretti now in 5th place, gets a bit crossed up on the curve, and Dario Franchitti is right ahead of him.
Yeah, and taking a very wide line through that corner, careful to stay away from the normal racing line. There's an accident now at the back of the field. Gualter Salas has spun. Car in front of him is into the tyre wall on the inside of the racetrack. Difficult to pick out who that is at the moment.
Absolutely, yes. Car upside down on the far side there. Gualter Salas is the car nearest you in the picture, but still very difficult to determine what that car is on the other side. Well, could be Al Unser Jr. It looks like it's one of the Penske cars, yes, and we think that it's Al Unser Jr. who has been flicked upside down. The safety crews, and you can just see some movement under the car there, which is a good sign, but obviously a very nasty incident. Let's see if we can see what happened. Al Unser Jr. and coming across the, well, he just made contact and then flicked across into the tyre. So not only exactly a very high speed impact, but it was just a very unfortunate incident, and which threw the car upside down. But you think, Jeremy, car number 3, we reckon?
Yeah, we can't really see a number as yet, but there we'll see. There's the kart safety team there right on the spot, making sure that whoever it is in there is okay. We're hearing word that it's Paul Tracy, and there is Roger Penske, the team owner, looking somewhat concerned, obviously, in the pits.
Yeah, well, that's a very nasty looking incident indeed, and so the car upside down and the crew going to work as quickly as possible, but of course they will take their time here and just hope that things are all right. They won't be in a rush to turn this thing back on onto its wheels in case there's been any neck injury.
Yeah, and making sure too that there is no fuel leaking out. That'll be one of the first concerns of the kart safety team. They really are very, very experienced, these guys, and they're extremely good at their job. And once they've ascertained there's no direct problem, then they will turn the car over and allow Paul to get out of the car. But there we see Gualter spinning really on his own, and the 2 Penskes there, quite a margin behind him. Paul Tracy elects to go to the inside of the corner. As you can see, Salas spinning, but then Salas comes right back across him, and Paul has absolutely nowhere to go.
No, that's right. Then it slides across the grass, but it's when it hits the tyres that it gets flicked up into the air and just rolls over onto the roll hoop just behind the driver's head, which of course is there to protect the driver in that incident, and hopefully that will have done its work. Didn't look as though it dug in too much, and now you see they're just being very, very careful to get that car back down again and not to jolt it too much. And of course it is critical in this sort of situation. There could have been just a nasty knock to the neck, and they have to be so careful. Good job done there by the kart safety team, not rushing in and panicking, which we've seen in some events in the past, not necessarily in this championship, but it's very important that time is taken. There is Paul Tracy, and he's clambering out of the car, and that's a great sign. And we've just heard that the crew is actually getting his backup car ready.
Bit of wishful thinking there. I think the race has already started, so there is no chance of that happening for Paul Tracy. But if the race had been stopped, if there had been a red flag and a complete restart, then he would have been able to go to the backup car. Now they're getting now they've ascertained that Paul is okay. You can just see the flash of the corner workers getting Walter Saller's car back underway.
So he doesn't look too fussed by it, does he? His upside down experience, and we saw that shot of Parker Johnson at the beginning of the show going upside down last year. Seems to be a bit of a happening here at the Road America circuit. So the earlier points leader Paul Tracy doesn't look as though he's going to be in much shape to close that points gap down to Alex Zanardi. Mauricio Gugelmin leads them round from Mark Blundell, Alex Zanardi, Franchitti in 4th, Michael Andretti in 5th, Scott Pruitt in 6th, and there were no really major changes on that opening lap and until they came round to the yellow flag. Everyone starting line astern anyway, and there Paul Tracy, with a rather rueful expression, marches his way back towards the pits, just picking up a few bits and pieces along the way. But what a great disappointment for the Canadian.
Yeah, he's had awful luck these last 4 or 5 races, because he missed that race in Detroit when he had some sort of weird virus that was affecting his balance, and he just couldn't see straight at all. He had to miss that race, and since then just nothing has gone right for the poor guy.
So Roger Penske, the team leader, looking extremely resigned after what has been a very tough part to the season, as you say, Jeremy, and this just has not helped their cause at all. So to see, still not quite sure where to go. I think he's probably going to get a lift back, actually, from the safety crew, which is a sensible idea. That was actually
Dr. Terry Trammell there that was speaking to Paul just before he went off into the ambulance. Terry Trammell is the specialist that looks after these drivers, particularly in terms of leg injuries or any sort of structural damage, so to speak, for the drivers. He's done a lot of work over the years, and is a great friend of all these drivers, and he's always very concerned, and he's just passing on his best wishes and probably commiseration to Paul, knowing Dr. Trammell.
So the other cars still coming around. They've just completed about 1.5 laps so far after that dramatic start incident, and of course really wasn't a lot that Paul Tracy could do about that, and I shouldn't think he'll blame Walter Salers as much as it's just one of those things. It's just an unfortunate incident that can always happen at the start of a race, particularly when it's so slippery out there today.
Yeah, one would have thought the odds were that Salers would spin to the outside of the corner, and unfortunately Walter had a bit of momentum on those tyres as they were spinning, and it was just enough to give enough grip to spin it back across the racetrack. If Walter had stood on the brakes, the car would probably just slid along the racetrack and people would have been able to go either side. But you know, I'm not blaming Walter there. It was just one of those things. Obviously he lost it coming out of the corner, and at that stage he's just trying to keep on the racetrack and try and get underway again. That's what he's thinking, and poor old Paul Tracy just happened to choose the wrong side to go. I mean, a split second earlier or later he could have seen which way the car was going to go. He'd have probably missed it, but that's the way Paul Tracy's luck is going just now, it seems.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Although it wouldn't have been that great a surprise if it had been Alonso either, because his luck hasn't been very much better this year. But Al is still survived, I do believe. Yes, he's in 13th position. So Alonso Jr., who we thought it might be initially, not him. It was Paul Tracy. Now, here's a view from Christian Fittipaldi, who was just behind that group there. You can see up ahead the white car. Tracy collects it. Do you get a view there? You see a view of Tracy's car going over just as we passed on the onboard camera of Christian Fittipaldi. So he was able to watch that, although I should think he was fairly busy concentrating on keeping his car in a straight line coming out of turn 1. Difficult for the drivers as well, because we've all been sitting around waiting for this race to get underway. It doesn't exactly calm them down much to have this sort of delay. They've been sitting in the back of their transporters in the hospitality areas in their transporter, but it's not, they're keyed up all the time, and that really doesn't help at all when they get out onto the track. A very good idea by CART, I have to say, to start them single file, and I think Could have been a lot worse if it hadn't been single file.
Yeah, it's amazing actually how quickly the track has dried out. We had a little race just a few minutes ago for the Dodge Neon cars, and that certainly helped to dry out this track quite significantly. And as you can see there, there's not much, certainly no standing water in this racetrack, and it really is beginning to dry out fairly quickly. And that's certainly going to be very interesting to see how that plays out over the next few laps. You can see Mark Blundell driving on the right-hand side of the racetrack. It's damper out there. He's just trying to keep those tyres as cool as he possibly can. And certainly, we've got a couple of people coming into the pits here. We've got Hiro Matsushita and Gualter Salas at the back of the field. There's a couple of the tail end of cars there. Salas, of course, is a lap down after that incident. But, you know, as we saw in Portland, in a full wet early on in that race, Firestone definitely had a very distinct advantage. But as the track began to dry, then the Goodyear guys came into their own. And this track is drying out pretty quickly.
Yes, it is. We're already seeing that line develop. There's the damage to Paul Tracy's car, the very bent-looking left rear rim on that machine, and of course the nose cone. Now this is Gualter Salas, in fact, having a nose cone change down there in the pit lane, almost opposite our commentary position, and hopefully that's the only damage done to Gualter's car. If he's got away with it that lightly, then he's a lucky man, and he may well be able to join the back of the queue and get back into this race, which would be good news for the youngster. Yep, they've got that car running. Oh, no, I said that too soon, didn't I? He stalled it coming out of the pits, and they're going to have to pull him back into the bay and get him out again. Also into the pits there is Patrick Carpentier. Now that's interesting. There you can see him being brought into the far end of the pit lane, just ahead of Salas. Don't know what the problem is for the Canadian, but there's obviously something worrying the team. And Carpentier, who had started quite a long way down, 20th position, but obviously in trouble on that opening lap. Maybe some sort of misfire he's picked up. Yeah,
because he came in a long way behind the rest of the pack, so that's somewhat curious. And we look out of our window here, we can see they're still working on that car, and we'll see whether he can get back out into the race.
So yes, we just had confirmation from the pit radio that there is a misfire on Carpentier's car. Of course, all this rain doesn't exactly help the electronics on these machines. They were all sitting out in the rain for a while, then they put the covers on. There's a good sight. There's Paul Tracy just going up to the medical centre. Medical centre which we looked at on one of our programmes earlier on this year in Michigan, in fact. It's $1 million medical centre, an absolutely superb facility. Just taking another look again at the incident, and Alain Sajuni, in fact, able to escape round the back there, and everyone else just about managing to escape because Salas was far enough over to the right, but poor old Paul Tracy was the one who was the victim of that incident.
Yeah, no question. From where Tracy was on the track as Gualter was spinning, Tracy had to go to the inside line. He had no choice. Salas at that stage definitely was spinning towards the outside of the racetrack, and it was only after Paul had made his commitment to go to the inside that those rear tyres just got enough grip just to push that car forward maybe just 2 or 3 feet. And that's really all it took, and that was just disaster for Paul Tracy.
There's the damage to the nose cone of Gualter Salas. You could see that the monocoque construction of the carbon fibre and aluminium honeycomb in there. The construction of that nose cone, very strong. They have to be very strong, of course, to meet the rules and the impact tests that are part of the kart safety features. But of course it's a slightly different incident where a car runs over the top of the nose cone. It's not really designed to withstand that sort of treatment, but it's good to see that they've got Salas back out again.
Yeah, meanwhile we just had a note from Dario Franchitti, who radioed into his crew to say the track is pretty dry up at this end of the racetrack where we are, up towards turn 1, but it's very damp still around the rest of this racetrack, so it'll be a while yet before we see anybody even thinking about coming in for slicks.
So here we go, restart number 1 as we get Mauricio Gugelmin climbing this steep hill to come across the line and receive the green flag onto lap number 3. In fact, it is not 4. We're not quite got that far yet. And Mauricio Gugelmin leads Mark Blundell down towards turn number 1 with Alex Zanardi in 3rd position, Franchitti in 4th. And let's hope that they all make it through this first corner safely this time. Somebody was a little bit crossed up on the inside. Looked like De Ferran, but I think he managed to keep it all together. Perhaps just trying to take a tighter line to get more traction out of the corner. So there's Gugelmin now, just trying to pull away. Got the advantage of clean visibility, no spray being thrown up, but as you can see, in fact, not that bad in terms of spray, and that's just a little worse as they start coming down the hill into turn number 5. This is a tricky area. We saw an awful lot of cars going off here this morning.
Yeah, there were cars spinning every which way there, as indeed there were on many of the other corners as well. We can see There they go up the hill. There's Brian Herter and Greg Moore right behind him. Greg Moore sliding that player's car, and there behind him one of the Brahma cars. I think that's Raoul Boisel. There is Greg Moore, the player's Reynard Mercedes, tiptoeing through turn 6 to the top of the hill, and under pressure as it goes down Hurry Downs. There's a wonderful name for a part of the racetrack, as they are streaming down the hill towards turn 8.
Now into turn number 8 then. This is a tight left-hander followed by the carousel, where they're building up speed here. And now this is a corner where you can try an outside line in the wet. Now watch at Dario. Is he going to stay out wide? Looks as though he is. Yep, staying out wide on the outside line, looking for a little bit more grip. But we've got Paul Tracy in the pits. Let's hear from him.
Race car, let alone an IndyCar before?
No, I mean, I've been racing since I was 7 and never got upside down before, so it's a pretty sad day for the Marlboro crew. The race had only just started, and Walter spun in front of us, and I had to go one way or the other, and I guess I chose the wrong way, and just clipped him, and the tire barrier rolled me over. So it's it's pretty disappointing for the championship for us, and we just can't seem to buy any luck right now.
Seems like too many times we've been have to talk to you lately early in a race about this championship that is now disappearing with only the 3 races to go after this. The challenge really is huge now, isn't it?
Well, it really is. I mean, we had a lot of good luck to start the season. We had a lot of things go wrong, places like we were spun in Brazil and still came off and won the race. So we had some good luck, and I guess it's catching up with us now. It's just can't seem to have any good luck right now.
Hey, I'll tell you, good luck that you're okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The leaders coming up to cross the line. Mark Blundell making sure that, and Alex Zanardi even more so, making sure they're on the wet part of the circuit to keep the tyres cool on this drier section of track. Into turn 1 they come now. Dario Franchitti, there he is in 4th place and sliding that car. Remember, not much experience in the wet, but he's on the Firestone tyre. Top 3 cars are on the Firestone. Michael Andretti's the top runner on Goodyear, then Gilles de Ferran on Goodyear's, and then he's being chased by Scott Pruitt on the Firestones.
Yeah, de Ferran was able to move past Scott Pruitt on that last lap, and there is Brian Herter we see coming out of turn 3 ahead of Greg Moore, sliding that car sideways again under hard acceleration out of turn 3.
Yes, it's clear that the Goodyear tyres working pretty well. We're not seeing that sort of drop-off that we saw in the early part of the Portland race, with both Andretti, de Ferran and Herter keeping pace at the moment pretty well with the Firestone cars. That's good news. And of course, the rain not as heavy as it was in the warm-up this morning. Herter reported in the warm-up that he was struggling to keep up with the Firestone cars through the carousel section of the track, but it's just not as wet as it was this morning. The tyres are not having to clear away the water quite so much, and perhaps that's helping the Goodyear guys. Well, we've had news from the pits that Patrick Carpentier is in fact now lost 4th gear, so it looks as though that's the end of the race for the youngster. And Roberto Moreno's joined that team now as a bit of a team assistant and a bit of the Rick Mears role, but he was spotted having a seat fitting yesterday, so whether that's just to try the car out or whether Roberto's actually going to end up doing a bit of driving for Bettenhausen, we'll have to wait and see.
I think the plan is there to get him out on a road course and just try and sort out some of the problems that Patrick Carpentier has been having. Patrick's been brilliant on the ovals. He's been absolutely spectacular. He qualified 3rd a couple of times and certainly was run up front both at Milwaukee and at Nazareth. And also, of course, he led at the US 500 and at Gateway. There is Brian Herter pressuring Raoul Boisel with Greg Moore right behind him. A good little 3-car train there.
That's right, yes. It's actually Scott Pruitt in the lead of the Brahma cars there with Herter and Moore Boisel. Then behind those two, then Bobby Rahal, and behind Bobby is Jimmy Vasser, still running, but quite a long way down from the leaders now. This is the interesting battle at the moment as Scott Pruitt tries to fend Brian Herter and Greg Moore. And remember what a disastrous time that Scott Pruitt had in Portland when he spun the car coming out of the final corner. That really set him back after putting it on pole position in the dry qualifying. Cross the line, Maurizio Gugelmin's completed 5 laps. He leads by half a second over Mark Blundell. Franchitti is 3rd, Zanardi 4th, Andretti 5th, ahead of de Ferran, Pruitt, Herter and Moore.
Top mechanics around the world depend on Valvoline to keep their engines, the heart of every car, in top condition. People who know use Valvoline.
The very best of soccer action. Eurogoals, every Monday evening. In 1 hour, you'll see more going into the nets than a North Sea fisherman sees in a year. Canned, just for you. Make sure you catch it. Eurogoals, Monday 2300 CET, 2200 UK on Eurosport. With Deu. Back to the PPG Kart World Series with Valvoline Motor Oil.
So Parker Johnson, he's a bit further down in 14th position. Christian Fittipaldi in 15th now.
Yeah, moving up 3 places already in this race, and he's been trying to get past Parker Johnson next. Parker's not the easiest of guys to pass. There is Brian Herter making a move on Scott Pruitt around the outside line under braking. He's able to brake much deeper than Scott Pruitt. Takes the line into turn 5, and is he able to get the power on on the exit of the corner? Yes, he is. But Scott Pruitt, a great exit to the corner up the inside, and whoa, what great stuff! There we are, wheel to wheel through turn 6.
This is good racing from Brian Herter and Scott Pruitt, and now Brian Herter just has the shell car ahead of the Brahma car of Scott Pruitt, and it looks as though he's completed the maneuver, which started about 3 corners earlier, going down into turn number 5. But Brian Herter showing that these Goodyear tyres are working well in the conditions, and if they hold up well as the track continues to dry, the Goodyear runners could be in very good shape. Herter's driving absolutely superbly at the moment. Remember that disappointment he had last week when leading in mid-air and suffering a puncture, but he seems to be making up for that a bit now.
Yeah, there you can see that dry line just beginning to emerge. But it's through this next section of track, through the kink there, and under the trees up to Canada Corner, and the next couple of corners it's still very wet indeed. Meanwhile, we just heard, we saw that Dario Franchitti came past in 3rd place, but here's Patrick Carpentier.
Buy a break right now.
Yeah, we've been struggling a little bit, and luck doesn't seem to be on our side. I think we had a good car this weekend. We were 3rd and then 12th in the first practice. And then I had a big shunt in the wall, so we had to use the backup all weekend. Then now we had a problem with the gearbox we couldn't go. So it's a shame for the Rookie of the Year championship, but Dario's very quick, so maybe he'll make some point today. But he didn't have much of a breakthrough this year, so it's both the same for us.
We'll see you next race.
Thank you.
So there's the French-Canadian Patrick Carpentier, disappointed. Last year here, he actually wrapped up his Formula Atlantic title by winning the race. So good race here last year, but not the same story in the kart series in his rookie year. Brian Herter then running in 7th position, and having got ahead of Scott Pruitt, pulling away a little bit now, just opening up the advantage slightly. And so it's Greg Moore who now begins to put Pruitt under increasing pressure. Greg Moore, who started down in 10th place, a little further down than we might have expected, but he's now beginning to apply that pressure. Meanwhile, let me just tell you, the 2 leaders, no change there. There's still only half a second between Maurizio Gugelmin and Mark Blundell.
Yeah, but Dario Franchitti has moved up into 3rd place. What I was going to say before was that Alex Zanardi had a quick slip off the road somewhere. We didn't see where it was, but he slid off long enough for Dario Franchitti to be able to get past. And on that last lap, Dario actually closed in on the 2 leaders by a little bit more than a second. Meanwhile, he pulled away 4 seconds from Alex Zanardi. So Dario Franchitti really is flying.
Yeah, his fastest lap on that last lap by over a second from over all the other guys. So Franchitti putting in a superb effort there into 3rd position now. So we've got Blundell 2nd, Franchitti 3rd, and up front Maurizio Gugelmin still doing a fine job. But just watch this battle a little further down as Fittipaldi gets down the inside of Johnston, and Parker Johnson, I think, was going to lose that place. As you get back on board with Dario, we're switching around a bit because Franchitti closing up to the back of Mark Blundell's car by the looks of things there.
Yeah, well, there's action all over this racetrack, isn't there? There's so much going on, it's tough to know where we should be, but we're on board now with Christian Fittipaldi. He was so fast out of the carousel there, wasn't he? But he's not going to be able to make a move into the kink on Andre Ribeiro.
So Fittipaldi got past Johnston, but can he get past the Brazilian now? Jimmy Vasser's just ahead of these 2. So we've got some experienced guys in there, and Alonso Jr. just behind them. So we really are seeing some changes in this race already in the early stages as the track begins to dry out a little bit.
It's still very wet down there. You can see it pretty gingerly on the power. There's not really much of a dry line, and up through this next corner. And there goes Andre Ribeiro holding off that position there from Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi much faster faster through the corners. He'll try and get a good exit here out of turn 14, try and slingshot pass on this long straightaway.
Let me tell you that the leaders have already gone past us up here, and Franchitti is very much closer to Blundell. There he is. That's how close Franchitti is now to Blundell. Blundell in the Motorola car, Franchitti in the Hogan Racing, and he has moved up over the last lap or so, right onto the tail. And on the last lap, Guterman set the fastest lap by just a 500th of a second over Franchitti, and now Franchitti has the difficult task of trying to find a way past Blundell, and particularly that's going to become more and more difficult as this race continues, because the line that they're normally using is going to dry out more than the inside into the corner. So you try and outbrake somebody, you're going to be on the slippery stuff, and that's going to make things very, very dodgy indeed. But Franchitti's closed up to the back of Blundell, who in turn seems to have just eased up a little bit more to Maurizio Guterman again.
Yeah, there's the first three down into turn. Look how slick that is on the left-hand side of the screen as they turn into that corner. Mark Blundell sliding wide coming out of that corner, but I don't think Dario's going to be able to move going into the carousel. Meanwhile, these guys have pulled away more than 5 seconds from Alex Zanardi, who's still in 4th position.
Just watching them there now, experimenting with the line a bit. You see Mark was on the wide line, but Dario found a dry a bit on the inside. Dario will know he decides against it. It's a difficult section there. You've got to be very brave to be quick through the kink as well, and he's being sensible at this point. Remember, Dario is chasing points more than anything here this weekend. He's still looking for a good points finish. He's been so close to a podium finish, but he's yet to come, and I think that's going to register fairly heavily in his mind in this race.
And there is Michael Andretti, who's moved past Alex Zanardi. So Zanardi, who was brilliant in the wet this morning, he was actually 2 seconds quicker than anybody in the morning warm-up session, and was really, well, he's fast everywhere, isn't he? Let's face it. But certainly seems to be struggling here this afternoon.
Yeah, that's very odd to see the Italian, who's been so quick on so many occasions. Remember last year in Portland, where he was very good as well in the wet conditions. But Zanardi at the moment seems to be struggling a little bit, and we'll try and see what the gap is next time. Guterman goes through, Blundell, Franchitti in 3rd, then the gap back to Michael Andretti in 4th position. Zanardi crosses the line in 5th place on a 2:15, about nearly 3 seconds off the pace of the front runners on that lap, and that's a very strange situation. Further behind him, 7 seconds back, is De Ferrer. It's Brian Herter, Scott Pruitt, Greg Moore, and Raul Boesel is just getting that little bit closer to the back of Greg Moore's car now. So watch out for the veteran Brazilian, who's been putting in a good performance or two. Finished in 4th place last week in Mid-Ohio, and has generally been putting in one of his better seasons, particularly in the second half of the championship. So there's Greg Moore, still chasing Scott Pruitt, and now there looks as though there might be a chance for Moore to really put a challenge on him, but again it's that trouble of getting onto the slippery stuff when he makes a pass.
Yeah, there it is. It's totally slick. There's trees on either side of the racetrack here, and the breeze really doesn't get through to dry out the racetrack. And there, out of turn 5 is always very, very slippery there, even at the best of times. But there's the top 6: Guterman, Blundell, Franchitti, Andretti, Zanardi, and De Ferrer rounding out the first 6.
The battle continues for this 8th position at the moment. Pruitt 8th, Greg Moore in 9th in the blue and white players car, Raul Boesel in 10th position. So the two Patrick Racing cars sandwiching that machine of Greg Moore. But meanwhile, the leaders have completed 8 laps so far. What will be quite interesting this afternoon in these conditions, Jeremy, it's a 50-lap race, but of course there's always a 2-hour limit on these races as well. In these conditions, we'll probably be getting fairly close to that, I would think.
Yeah, it won't be a million miles away, but certainly the track is beginning to dry, and it will continue to do so. There is Mark Blundell really pressuring Maurizio Guterman and trying to get alongside as they come onto the start-finish straightaway.
Mark Blundell looking to take over the lead of this race against teammate Maurizio Guterman. The two Pac West cars side by side as they cross the line, and Blundell just sneaks ahead, but can he get onto the dry line to get on the brakes into turn 1? He gets to the outside, Guterman takes the inside, Blundell takes over the lead of the race after a great move up the start-finish straight, but we didn't really see where Guterman lost the time. It may have been just turning into that last corner. Blundell certainly seemed to get the run out of that final corner and just accelerated up the hill with better exit speed, and Blundell, who's already won 2 races this year, one of those victories being in wet, dry conditions at Portland, has now set himself up at the front of this field in the very early stages of this race, and Dario Franchitti still doing a fine job and keeping in touch with the 2 leaders in 3rd place.
Yeah, great race already developing, but you know, already these drivers will be taking a very close watch of their fuel consumption. We've got 9 laps in the books. They need to be able to go through to lap 18 or 19 if they can at the very least, and that'll be helped of course by that early couple of laps under caution, and the wet conditions also will be of assistance, but they're certainly keeping a very close eye on the fuel at this stage in the race.
It's just a question of some parts of the circuit, one being quicker, other parts of the track, the Gugelmin perhaps closing up just a little bit around the back part of the track here through the carousel, sweeping through that long right-hander, and Mark Blundell still tending to take a slightly wider line, looking for a bit more traction on the outside of the corner as he then accelerates up through the gears and down into the kink. They call it a kink, but it really is a very serious corner under the trees. This is likely to be the wettest part of the track, as we were saying a little earlier. There you can see just how much tree cover there is on that back straight, and that's where the breeze cannot get to, and that's how slippery. You can see the standing water still on the inside into Canada Corner. They slither their way out, and then up under this bridge as well. Very greasy section of the track.
Actually, Dario Franchitti was been off the road at least twice on the exit of Canada Corner there this weekend already. So look at him closing up under braking there on Mauricio Gugelmin.
Again, it seems to be that part of the track that Gugelmin's a little bit slow, but Dario takes a wide line through that last corner. I'm not sure that really worked quite as effectively as he thought it would. Gugelmin seemed to have the better run off the corner, and I don't think Franchitti's going to be able to repeat the move that Blundell made on the last lap. So they cross the line. It's still Blundell leads from Gugelmin in second position by 1.7 seconds. Dario Franchitti then right on the tail of Maurizio Gugelmin's car. Again, Franchitti using the outer line through turn 1, really using his head, looking for that little bit of an extra grip where it might be around the track. But of course, with more cars now using the normal line, it could be that the standard line will begin to become quicker again. Just have to keep an eye on that. The gap back to Andretti, meanwhile, is another 5 seconds behind Dario Franchitti.
And some changes a little bit farther down. The top 10's pretty much stagnant now. We've got at the front of the field, we have Blundell, Gugelmin, Franchitti, of course, then Michael Andretti. He's making a bit of a move. He's only just over 5 seconds behind Franchitti, and actually inches way a little bit closer to that leading battle. And we've got Zanardi, De Ferran, Herta, Pruitt, Moore, Bozell rounding out the top 10. Andre Ribeiro, who's in 11th now. His last couple of laps, he's got past both Jimmy Vasser and Bobby Rahal.
Interesting, we've just gathered from the radios that Mark Blundell is saying, get the slicks ready. I think somebody might decide to go for slicks fairly soon. Well, I have to say, looking at that part of the circuit, they'd have to be fairly brave. The lap time's at the moment 2 minutes 11, so that's quite a long way off what they're doing in the dry. It's about 30 seconds off what they're doing in dry conditions. And look at this, Franchitti's got a great run on Gugelmin coming out of the carousel, and Dario Franchitti's taking second place from the Brazilian. Franchitti moves into second. Blundell is the leader. Franchitti now in second as they pass the slower car of Charlie Nierberg there. He's well out of the running, so don't worry about him. But Franchitti grabs second, and now he can go chasing after the race leader.
Boy, that's a brave move from Dario Franchitti. He's been absolutely excellent on the exit of that carousel. We were watching there in qualifying on Friday. He's magnificent in the corner when it's fully dry, and he's so fast off that corner now. And this time, he was able to get right alongside Mauricio Gugelmin, and that enabled him to make that pass on the inside into the kink. But it's still a heck of a move, that was.
So Michael Andretti in 4th place. There he is, just getting past Nierberg himself, and running a fairly smooth, consistent race at the moment. His last lap was much the same pace as the leaders, on board with Michael as he comes up to cross the line once again. And let's just see what the gap between himself and Gugelmin, well, it's about 4.5 seconds last time round. Watch him through turn 1 here. Very gentle on the throttle as he began to feed the power in. There is Alex Zanardi. We can't really explain the loss of pace for Zanardi. He's still in 5th place, and he's some 2 seconds behind Michael Andretti, but he's just put in a very quick lap. That's very interesting, Jeremy. He's just done a 2 minute 10.7, which is one of the fastest laps of the leaders.
Yeah, I think, you know, he's as we talked about a little earlier, he's already looking after his fuel. He doesn't want to burn the tyres off either. He wants to make sure that he can make these tyres last through until that first pit stop. They want to be able to make the change to slicks at the same time as they take on fuel. So they've still got another 7 or 8 or 9 laps to go on these tyres. They don't want to burn that rubber off those wet tyres.
Yes, good point. So Zanardi perhaps already thinking about that, protecting the tyres and making them last all the way to the first stop. Meanwhile, Franchitti not able to close close the gap up to Mark Blundell. The two British drivers doing a fantastic job here at Road America, this most European of circuits in many ways, and many of them have likened it to the Spa circuit particularly. But it's just amazing to see how well the two British drivers are going. Blundell on his second appearance here at Road America, Dario Franchitti on his first appearance, and still doing a superb job. There you can see down in the back west pits, though, the slick tyres are being made ready. As mentioned, they talked about that on the radio already. And even down there at Canada Corner, you can see the line itself is beginning to dry out, and as they climb up the hill under the bridge.
There was Mark Blundell running wide purposefully onto that wetter part of the track, just to try and keep the temperature down a bit on these tyres. Smart move by Mark Blundell, and certainly this track is really drying out, and I'm sure some of them would love to take the chance and come in for some slicks, but I think it's a heck of a gamble. They need to be able to try and make this race on 2 pit stops as they possibly can.
Now, of course, if the Goodyear tyre lasts better, that might give them a better chance, people like Andretti and De Ferran, but we'll just have to see, as at the moment Blundell is our race leader.
Speed World, Monday, 2000 CET, 1900 UK on Eurosport. With K&N Formula One air filters for your car. Back to the PPG Kart World Series with Husqvarna Forest and Garden Products.
There is Mark Blundell out in front by 1.7 seconds at the end of the last lap, and a bigger gap back to Maurizio Gugelmin now, and the track really is beginning to dry out, because we're now seeing quite big chunks of time coming off the lap time each time they come around. 2 seconds they gained. They're now into the 2:08 bracket around this 4-mile track, so it really is beginning to dry out. But as we mentioned before, it can be very dry in parts of the circuit and still very damp and very slippery on other parts. Andre Ribeiro there, you just saw the back shot of the Brazilian, who's up into 11th place and pushing very hard indeed, trying to close up that bit more to Raul Boesel. And this little battle has remained pretty much constant throughout the race so far. Scott Pruitt is still doing a great job of keeping Greg Moore behind him, and then right behind him is Raul Boesel, and as we mentioned, Andre Ribeiro closing up as well. On board now with Michael Andretti again.
Hurry down into turn 8, and there is Alex Zanardi getting back past Michael Andretti, but he slides wide on the exit. Can Andretti get alongside him? Yes, he can, but he can't make the pass.
Interesting, Zanardi fights his way back up into that 4th position, and suddenly Zanardi has found a new lease of life in the last few laps, and he seems to be pushing that much harder.
I'd say the crew has Mo Nunn, the engineer for Alex Zanardi, has got on the phone, got on the radio to Alex Zanardi and said, "You're okay on fuel, we've got enough to make it on 2 more pit stops. Go flat out, go as fast as you can, try and make up some ground to the leaders." And that's what Alex Zanardi is doing.
Yeah, he's doing a fine job, isn't he? Fighting his way past Michael Andretti, one of the hardest racers, and making a clean job of it as well. No contact between them, though. They came fairly close, and as he climbs the hill now to complete another lap, almost around to turn number 14, Zanardi has moved his way up into 4th position. We'll keep an eye on the gap. The leader's just gone past us. That's Mark Blundell. Franchitti goes past 2.8 seconds further back. We wait to see Maurizio Gugelmin, and Andretti's into the pits. Michael Andretti is the first man to come into the pits. They can come in very quickly. They get to the bend line, then they have to slow it down. And Michael, the first in, is he going to put slicks on?
I'm sure he is. He wouldn't be in at this stage otherwise. But this is a big gamble by the Newman-Haas team. No question, they will have to make a 3rd pit stop. So Michael will be hoping that he can make up enough time now by going out on his slick tyres to be able to overcome that deficit. Quite a gamble, and the Newman-Haas team certainly has been known to gamble in the past. There goes Michael Andretti. He's a master in these conditions, but it's going to be very, very interesting. He's going to drop well down the order, that's for certain.
Remember, he's on cold slicks. There are no tyre warmers allowed in the championship, so he is on a very cold set of tyres, and it's going to be very difficult for him to get some grip. Now watch Zanardi. This was the replay of the pass when Alex Zanardi retook 4th. Brave pass from Alex Zanardi. Very nearly ran out of road on the exit, but a little bit like the pass in Laguna Seca on Brian Herter last year, just enough. He managed to stay on a bit better here than in California, but a good, brave manoeuvre from Zanardi. The question is, what everybody will be looking at is, how fast can Michael Andretti go now he's put slick tyres on? The lap times will be analysed by every team in the pit lane. Oh, and we've just heard he's picked up a pit lane violation. He's been too fast in the pits. 75 miles an hour he's been radar trapped at. He's only allowed to do 60, and Andretti could just have thrown away his opportunity in this race. Can you believe it? Michael Andretti has made a mess of it in the pits. He went too fast.
That's amazing. All of these cars have a button, a rev limiter on the engine that is set to whatever the pit lane speed limit is. In this case, as you say, 60 miles an hour. But the button only works if you press it.
Well, I don't know whether Michael forgot to press it or whether he pressed it too late. As I mentioned, they can come steaming up that pit road entry, and they really do come up there quickly. It may have been just too late slowing the car down when he went over the line, maybe a bit late onto the brakes. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But Michael Andretti will perhaps lose any advantage he may have gained from being the first onto slicks. I wonder if anybody else will take the same decision in the next few laps. Meanwhile, up front it's still Blundell from Franchitti and Gugelmin. Zanardi in 4th place. Zanardi's only... Oh, and Andretti's lost it. And coming into Canada corner, Michael's lost it on the slicks. It all makes the penalty a bit irrelevant now, doesn't it? Because Michael has just become victim of the wet conditions down there. And Mario watches the monitor. The 3-time winner here, as indeed is Michael, but it's not going to be number 4 today. Michael has thrown away any opportunity to take the win. And, well, he might well have been distracted by the news that he had to come into the pits, but at the end of the day, a basic mistake in the slippery conditions.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure there'll be a full course caution here, just to add to his woes. But he's well stuck in that gravel. They're not going to get him out of there too quickly, I don't think. There is a crane in that corner. Looks like they're hooking up a rope there to get that car lifted out of the way, because maybe we will get through without a caution. Looking up at the stand here, there is Jim Swintel actually in front of us waving the double yellow flags.
Yeah, so that's a disappointing sign in a way. We've got a full course yellow. Replay of Michael's spin here on the... You see the wet on the tyres, in fact, and it just got away from him under braking. You can bet that he was already braking pretty gently coming into that corner. He knew the situation on slicks, that it was going to be difficult. That was always going to be the hard part of the circuit, and he'd managed to build up a bit of the heat in the tyres by then. Let's watch it. Yeah, nothing he could do about it. Back end got away, and that was all she wrote, straight off into the gravel trap. So we have a full course yellow, 14 laps in the books, and the pit crews are now getting ready for a very busy time.
Yeah, they'll have to make pit stops now. It's earlier than it's too soon. They didn't want to have to make them this early, but for sure they will all come into the pits, and they will all take on fresh tyres, slick tyres, and of course a full load of methanol. And there's Michael Andretti sitting in the car as they drag that car out of the way. Poor Michael Andretti. He'll be absolutely disappointed and angry with himself. That was a clear mistake by Michael Andretti. He knew it was slick under there. He'd been out through that corner several times before on the wet tyres, of course, so he knew exactly how slippery it was. But not in someone with Michael's car control was able to hang on to that car.
Now, Mark's got to be a bit careful pulling out here as Gugelmin comes in. Dario Franchitti also into the pits, and he is now pushed out of the pit lane. And it looks as though that was a reasonably clean stop for Franchitti, who slots in right behind Blundell. And, of course, he can't overtake in the pit lane right there, and they're both on the speed limiter anyway. And as they come back out onto the circuit, of course, they're still under yellows, so he can't nip past Mark Blundell here. But a good pit stop. Oh no, Dario's lost it! Dario's going to be in the wall! He's lost it! Oh, I can't believe it! What has he done on cold tyres? Just getting it on the power as he accelerated. Dario Franchitti has thrown away his chance now, and he will be absolutely fuming in there. What a great opportunity he had this afternoon, and that was just a mistake. The cold tyres catching him out, even under yellow flag conditions. Just take another look at this. He was right behind Blundell as they came out of the corner, and it was really just, he got on the power here, and it was just one of those crazy incidents. He just didn't quite catch it in time, and the concrete wall was there to catch him. Dario Franchitti out of the Texaco Javelin 200, and Carl Hogan cannot believe his eyes.
No, Carl won't be very happy there. There's a clear rookie mistake. You know, unlike in Formula One, of course, where they have heated tyres that go onto the cars during pit stop, no tyre warmers in the kart series, and stone cold tyres, slippery track, getting on the power, 800 horsepower in these conditions is awfully difficult to handle, even by the best of them. And Dario Franchitti certainly will be one of the best of them. He's been a brilliant form this season, but certainly a mistake from Dario Franchitti. There is his car by the side of the track, and he will play no further part in these proceedings.
A real footballing treat. The magic of Juventus against the might of AC Milan. Juve, whose squad includes Zidane, Deschamps, Del Piero, and Milan with Maldini, Boban, Desailly, and Weah. A match for the purist. The Luigi Berlusconi Trophy, AC Milan versus Juventus. Tuesday, 2030 CET, 1930 UK, live on Eurosport. With Totiv. Back to the PPG Kart World Series with Valvoline Motor Oil.
Up the hill comes Marc Blundell as the restart gets underway, and Guterman's very slow away. Zanardi's got past him straight off there. Now that's interesting, and a few cars getting themselves into a bit of a mess. Guterman now heads the next group of cars down into turn number 1. Ribeiro's down the inside. Oh, Ribeiro, has he made it too fast? I think he's just about managed to squeeze through. Oh no, he ran wide. Oh, and we've got 2 other cars off down there. 36 off down there, so...
and Matsushita, I think, as well. And
yeah.
Matsushita looks to be... There's Ribeiro losing more positions there. He got off the road again, it looks like, at the exit of turn 3. So he's undone all the good work he'd done over the previous 100 yards or so.
So Blundell needs from Zanardi, Guterman back to third to Ferran, then Pruitt, and look at where Fittipaldi is now. He's moved right up the order, and we've got the news that we're going to go full course yellow once again. Dear oh dear, this is not proving to be a very successful part to the race, as more incidents slowing everybody down. Zanardi on board with him in second position, chasing after Marc Blundell. He'll be getting a bit frustrated with this. He wants to get out there and do some racing, but oh, look at that right rear corner completely off Matsushita's car there. Fangio was the other car involved on that part of the circuit, and difficult to see. They presumably came together before they got racing again.
Yeah, absolutely, but I would hazard a guess to say that was really all caused by Mauricio Gugelmin, because he made a very poor restart, and we could see a huge concertina of cars, including Ribeiro there and Moore and the 2 Brahma cars and Christian Fittipaldi. I mean, they were all packed together as they flew past us, and it was just sort of everybody was packed up behind them. So I think a bit of a concertina movement there all the way back down the field. The pace car waves past PJ Jones. He'll be able to go around and join up the tail end of the field to get ready for this restart.
So Jones makes it round, but it's all been a bit messy with these yellow flag periods, and still Blundell leads. We've completed 20 laps now. The overhead view going down into Canada corner. That's this part of the corner where Michael Andretti had his problem. Matsushita run away, and that ends a bit of a run for him. He's actually had a few finishes recently, Jeremy, the Japanese driver, so that's a little bit of a disappointing end to that run for him.
Yeah, in actual fact, he's finished every single race since he took over the 97 equipment, the RV8B engine from Toyota. There's some of the local inhabitants having a good close look at the action here. Little chipmunk out in the woods. But yeah, that's the first DNF actually for Hiro Matsushita since he took over that equipment, and it'd be a disappointment for him.
So let's we just heard on the radio that Gilles de Ferran reporting back to his pits that Maurizio Gugelmin was asleep on the restart. Well, I think that's fairly clear from the way he got away up that hill. I mean, I'd love to see a replay of that, because we didn't quite see what happened at the bottom end of the hill, but Maurizio was very, very slow. Max Papis is into the pits, and they're putting fuel on board. And I wonder what's going on there. They just seem to be putting fuel in.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're going to have to make a splash and go at some stage in any case. They know that. They're at the tail of the field. They might as well make it now. He should be able to go the rest of the distance from here. Probably he and Jones and Herter are the only three possibly that are going to be able to make it to the end with just one more pit stop.
So interesting tactics from Max Papis, still looking to be the top of the Toyota-powered cars at the finish of the race. Quite a good inter-Toyota battle between Fangio, Papis and PJ Jones. They're sort of in the second league, I suppose, at the moment. But Toyota still are putting a lot of effort in. And it's interesting, I was talking to one of the engineers, they're actually bringing in quite a lot of engine specialists from the UK now to join in that Toyota program. There's a lot of money being put into the project, and Toyota are not going to sit back and see Mercedes and Honda and Ford disappear with winning all the races in this championship. They are very serious, and they're putting in a lot of effort for next year.
Very true. John Favor, who's been with the Penske team for a lot of years, an absolute wizard on the electronics, has recently left the team, and he's just showed up in a Toyota uniform. And that's a shrewd move by the Toyota management there. Pete Spence, who's been with Ford Cosworth in the past, he's there, another British engineer, and a lot of effort going into that program, as you say, and taking on people of the caliber of Spence and Favor shows they're serious about making this program, getting it right up to speed as quickly as they can.
Well, let's hope so. It would be great to have a fourth engine manufacturer doing a fine job as well. I think we got a little view of Dario Franchitti in there. It looked as though it was him. I couldn't really tell from that angle. Into the pits again, PJ Jones. So looks as though there's more problems for him. Unless they're putting some fuel in, but there's right rear corners off the car, so there's it's obviously something fairly seriously wrong. Just coming back to the engines for a moment, by the way, there is a manufacturers' championship in the kart series, and Mercedes-Benz are leading that at the moment. They've got 241 points. Honda are lying second in the championship, although their driver, Alex Zanardi's leading the table. They're lying second in the manufacturers' championship on 214 points, and Ford are running third with 191 points. And poor old Toyota, they really are in a different division. They're fourth, but only 8 points they've scored this year. But as we say, we're looking at major improvements coming from Toyota, particularly over the winter months. And well, there's a bit of work going on, not on the engine there, but a lot of work on PJ Jones's car.
Yeah, PJ's done a really good job. He's really meshed well with his race engineer, Gerald Tyler. The last 4 or 5 races, these two have really got a good thing going. Very good working ratios. Just like changing a suspension link up there on the right rear corner of that car. Some damage, perhaps, maybe in that incident with Adrian Fernandez at that last restart.
Just had news that Brian Herter is going to be heading into the pits for a splash of fuel, and that will be, as you say, Jeremy, to make sure that he can then make it through the rest of the race without stopping again.
Yeah, and he'll be able to go flat out now. I think he'll be able to turn that fuel mixture right up. Some of these other guys are going to be cruising right back, but he's going to be able to come in and run full rich, hopefully, to the end of this race. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Of course, Brian won't want too many other full course cautions, because all that'll do will help the other guys. But here comes a pace car past us here. The hand up there on the passenger side of the car. 1 lap to go before we go green.
Now we've had 1 hour of this race so far, which is interesting to see, and we've had 22 laps. So there's Brian Herter into the pits, by the way. So it's going to be, it looks as though it'll be under the 50 laps by the end. There's a problem for Herter, in fact.
Yeah,
what's going on?
He stalled the engine. Absolutely makes no difference at all at this stage. He'd be happy to get that out of the way, I suppose, because he's going to be last in any case as he rejoined after making that pit stop. He's already right at the back of the pack, so it certainly hasn't cost him anything. He'll just be kicking himself a bit and saying, make sure I don't do that next time I come into the pits.
Right, so Herter back out onto the track once more, and well, we'll just have to see what happens with the others at the moment. 22 laps completed, as I mentioned. Now, can we really expect him to go another sort of 22 laps on this tank of fuel, Jeremy? I mean, is he just doing the splash now? He's still going to have to make 1 more stop. So really, he's still going to have to make 1 more stop, but the other guys are going to have to make 2 more stops. That's the critical issue here. People like Blundell, Zanardi, Gugelmin, they're going to have to make 2 more stops, but Brian's will just be down to 1 stop, and he'll be able to run pretty much flat out without having to worry about economy up to that next stop.
Yeah, and he'll be hoping, of course, this race goes the whole distance. As you say, we've got 1 hour in the books already. It will be called at the 2-hour distance, and as you say, just 22 laps in the books. So 28 laps scheduled to go, and just under 1 hour in which to complete those laps.
I guess if they don't get too much yellow, it's possible, but if they carry on having as many yellow flags as we've had in this middle part of the race, then it will be a 2-hour limit, I should think, that would be brought in. great shots. So there's some great camera positions around this track, and it really lends itself to some spectacular angles on the cars.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It is a fabulous racetrack. This camera angle here, actually, the camera is on top of a huge crane above the quarry, which is actually on the other side of the carousel, which is the next corner that these cars will negotiate. And I tell you what, I don't know whether I'd fancy being up on that crane. It's a long way up in the air.
Yeah, it's quite breezy today. I think the cameraman's shaking around a bit up there, but doing a fine job and giving us some spectacular pictures from this Road America circuit. We're up in a bit of a sort of holiday region of the States up here. It used to be a popular holiday resort for people from Chicago in days before flight became so commonplace for holidays. And the lakes around here, Lake Elkhart itself, a popular holiday resort. And that still is to a large extent, but perhaps more nowadays used by people from Milwaukee, etc., rather than from Chicago. But a lovely area of the country. Obviously some pretty seriously cold winters, but during the summer it's a lovely place to be. Let's just run through the order, shall we, while we're waiting for this race to get underway again. Mark Blundell is our leader, Zanardi in second, Gugelmin in third, De Ferran is fourth, ahead of Scott Pruitt fifth, Fittipaldi doing a fine job in sixth, you're running on board with him now. Greg Moore seventh, Raul Boesel is in eighth, then Belby Rahal in ninth, Andre Ribeiro 10th, ahead of Jimmy Vasser and Alonso Jr.
Back from there, Parker Johnson, Michel Jourdain Jr., Juan Fangio, Richie Hearn, Adrian Fernandez, Max Papis, and then Brian Herter will be at the back of the pack. We've got 23 laps in the books and we're going green, and there is Zanardi looking to make a move on Mark Blundell.
Yes, he's hulked down the inside. Is he going to be brave into turn one? Remember, Zanardi needs the points in the championship. He might not take too big a gamble, although he's already seen him charge to get past Michael Andretti today. Through the kink of turn number 2, down towards turn number 3 now, and then they go on to another long straight which heads downhill, and again they're building up to around 200 miles an hour. In these conditions now, they really will be getting to those speeds again as the track continues to dry out down this hill at around... Oh, now that's interesting. Zanardi seemed to run over a little piece of debris or something there. A little bit of a spark under the car. You saw the front of the car wobble. That was strange. I don't know whether something got thrown up behind Mark Blundell's car. He seems to have survived the moment, but Zanardi in second. No! Is that Vasser? Is that Vasser? That is Jimmy Vasser, I think. So that's his teammate who was in 11th place. Number 1 car of Jimmy Vasser spinning down there at turn number 5. As I say, I think Zanardi survived whatever it was, but I think something went under the car. It may just have been a stone or something.
Wasn't that chipmunk, I hope, was it?
I don't think it was the chipmunk. I don't think it would have sparked quite as much as that. But there is Charlie Dierberg just making his way around at the back of the field.
News from the pits there that Vasser reckon he was hit by Parker Johnson. It's not the first time that's happened this year.
No, that's right. And Parker Johnson's on a bit of a tenuous strand at the moment in that drive in the green tail. And talking of the man himself, it looks as though his race has come to an end.
Yeah, that is actually the same place. I think he's pulled off there in turn 5, and through those tyres he's probably out of the race. Well, you can see the steering wheel out already, and Parker following close behind it. As just across from there, under the Texaco-Haviland Bridge, the Billy Mitchell Bridge, turn 13, come the race leaders Mark Blundell and Alex Zanardi close behind him. There is the battle for 5th place between Pruitt and on board with Christian Fittipaldi.
Yeah, just correcting a slide. That was the corner where Christian had an accident in qualifying earlier on this weekend, and Christian, who came close to winning this race last year, is looking superb again here today. Now chasing down towards turn 1. Meanwhile, side by side across the line was Boesel and Ribeiro, and they were absolute. There it is. Oh, Boesel's lost it. Raul Boesel hits Ribeiro, and they both go off at turn number 1 into the gravel trap. Oh, what a shame. They were side by side when they came past us here, and it looked as though it was going to be a tremendous battle, but in fact it was Boesel who lost it on the brakes coming into turn 1, and poor Andre Ribeiro was just a victim in the end, in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Absolutely nothing Andre Ribeiro could do about that. We could see the angle here that Boesel had lost control of the car and was spinning backwards, but Andre Ribeiro, he's concentrating on turning into the corner. Here we are, the replay here. There goes Scott Pruitt, there goes Christian Fittipaldi, then Moore and Rahal alongside each other. Behind them there is Raul Boesel losing it under braking. Andre's already committed to turning into the corner, nothing he could do, and off go both of those Brazilians. But you know, Andre Ribeiro had moved up on that previous restart and then threw it all away by running off the road a couple of corners, so he really shouldn't have been in that position in any case, I'd say.
Now the problem for Boesel there was he was on the wet line, of course, and he tried to outbrake Ribeiro, who was on the dry line, and what happened was the rear tyres just locked up momentarily under heavy braking, and that's the problem we're going to have now, because the dry line is really quite pronounced around the circuit. the meeting in the middle of a desert, like it looks like, doesn't it? And having a little discussion, and well, Ribeiro doesn't look too angry. I suppose it's just one of those things. I'm sure Raul will have apologized for that. He just lost it on that slippery side of the track, and a great shame because they were shaping up to have a good race, those two.
Thumbs up from Ribeiro there to one of the kart safety crews, and also from Raul Boisel. But
we nearly got a quick view of. A shame we didn't get a proper shot of Raul there. He seems to be growing a moustache and beard this weekend, doesn't he?
He's got one of those goatees, hasn't he?
Well, yeah.
It seems to be the rage all around these days.
That's right. Well, a change of look for Raul Boisel, but a change of luck as well. He doesn't finish this one, so
He hasn't dyed his head yet. He's not following the Jacques Villeneuve on Tom Kendall over here in a Trans Am, who incidentally won his 10th consecutive SCCA Trans Am race yesterday afternoon. He's bleached his hair, and he's pretty proud of the fact that Jacques followed him in doing that. Other winner this weekend in the Atlantic race this morning, Alex Barron for Lynx Racing added yet another win. That's his 4th win of the year to extend his lead in the cool Toyota Atlantic Championship.
So Blundell leads them round, and still under full course yellow, which is obviously a little disappointing. We want to get some racing going here. We've had far too many laps under yellow flag, but we've got Michael Andretti in the pits.
That this is tough to talk about, but I got to ask you, was it the right decision to, and I believe it was your call, to make the change to the slicks, and you were kind of the guinea pig?
Yeah, I still stick by my decision. It was definitely the right decision. I mean, when I came out of the pits, I was in front of Al Jr., and he was all over me until we got to the carousel, and I pulled him about 3 or 4 seconds just through the carousel and the kinks. So I knew at that point that I made the right decision, and I just went in under braking pretty much the same place as I was with the wets, which I had done in other corners, and I thought I'd be okay, and it locked the rears, and I tried to save it, and I didn't, and I just screwed up, you know, but I still feel I made the right decision.
And with it, the championship, I guess, is gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame it came down to that, you know. I just you can look at a lot of different races, and you know, but this one hurts when it's the one that actually does it, and it's my fault. So it'll be a long night tonight.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks.
Yeah, a long night, absolutely, for Michael Andretti. He's got to accept the blame for that one, and well, that's exactly what he did in the interview, but it doesn't make it any easier. Now we have 2 Brazilians walking along a concrete wall as they make their way back to the pits. Blundell is still our race leader as we're under yellow flag race conditions at the moment.
What is Ronaldo's new club? Play and win a home theatre system, including a big screen TV set, an audio-video display stand, plus an amplifier and a set of speakers. You can also win Eurosport t-shirts. Call now. Good luck.
Late night snooker. Every Monday, put your feet up, sit back, and enjoy the European League. The stars will be there, so why not make it a date? At midnight. The Snooker European League. Every Monday, midnight CET on Eurosport.
To the PPE Kart World Series with Husqvarna Forest and Garden Products.
So there's Blundell, and there you can see the speed on the slick tyres. A bit of an irrelevant graphic, really. It's getting drier, so it's bound to be going faster, isn't it, really? But we are going to go green this time around, so Alex Zanardi will be trying to keep as close as he can to the rear wing of Mark Blundell, and Mark Blundell slows it down and goes again. This is classic rolling start procedure, just trying to catch out the man who's behind, and if you're the leader, you've got the chance to play those games, and Mark Blundell played them perfectly. Look at the gap that he's opened up as they come up the hill.
Cat and mouse. Mark Blundell's the cat, and Alex Zanardi the mouse, and the mouse is under pressure from Mauricio Guzman as they flash past the start-finish line. Guzman looked to the inside into turn 1.
Yeah, he's going going for it. He's trying to take second place, and he's done it. He's got alongside, and Zanardi decided not to brave it out too much going into turn 1 there. He said, well, if you want it that badly, you can have it. I want to stay in this race. I've got to score points here today to try and extend my advantage. But he's got Gilles de Ferran in him now.
Yeah, we're on board with Gilles de Ferran. He reckoned that Mauricio Gugelmin was asleep at the last restart. Not so this time, Ben.
No, Gugelmin really making up for that awful restart quite a few laps ago now. And Gugelmin doing a fine job, and Zanardi being caught out by Marc Blondel. It served him right for being so close behind him, really. That is the penalty you pay for trying to be right up someone's gearbox at the restart, and Zanardi paid the penalty in big measure. On board with Gilles de Ferran, this great camera angle. We had this in Mid-Ohio last week as well. It's just mounted on the front wing of the car, and well, it just gives you such a good view of the track. Zanardi so close to the back of Gugelmin's car, and Marc Blondel's taking advantage of all this to escape up front.
Yes, indeed. There it is, the battle for second place going into the carousel. Gugelmin ahead of Alex Zanardi. It's you can see now they're back on the racing line, the tighter line through that corner. It's now pretty much dry through there. This next place here, well, there's the dry line emerging through the kink.
With Andre Ribeiro, tell us what happened from your seat.
Well, we were side by side before. This was the problem. Now, I passed Raul getting out of turn 11, and I was half a car in front of him on the outside, going into the corner, and then something happened with him, and he touched on the back of my car.
You're obviously okay. Can you tell us what happened, Raul, that triggered the incident?
Yeah, we came side by side on the straight, and I think still wet there on the braking area, so I was on the inside. My car got sideways, and we caught, and that's what happened.
It's such a treacherous condition out there for everybody right now. Is the driver who can stay extremely patient going to have the advantage, or is it experience going to come into play?
I think the track start to dry out. The problem is like overtake, you go offline, is still wet there. So that's the trick situation.
Okay, thanks, guys.
So action continuing out on circuit at the moment as Marc Blondel just pulls away a little bit from Gugelmin, but Zanardi's looking anxious to get back into second place and get past Mauricio Gugelmin. Is he going to go for the inside down here? Be careful, Alex. It's going to be wet and slippery on the inside line down into turn number 5, but it looks as though he's made a clean pass. Another good pass from Alex Zanardi, and he really is a racing driver that can find the gap, take the opportunity, and make it work, can't he? We've seen it so often before. This year in Cleveland, for example, when he overtook everybody, he's doing it again here. Oh, Max Papis has taken a little trip down the escape road.
Maybe he tried the same move in Alex Zanardi on the inside line there. He found it a little bit more slick than Alex did. A great pass by Alex Zanardi. Well, there he is getting together with Gualter Salas.
Yes, Gualter seems to be involved in just about 75% of all the incidents this afternoon, whether his fault or not. And Max Papis has just taken that drive down the escape road, and I think that's the end because he was quite high in the air there. That left rear suspension must be fairly severely damaged, I think. We'll have to wait and see. They're pretty strong, these cars, you know. That's the Reynard chassis. It stands up to a pretty heavy treatment. Been a bit of a difficult weekend, though, for Max. They've already had to send one of his monocoque chassis back to England after damage sustained when he hit a spun Greg Moore in practice earlier in the weekend.
Back to the Reynard composite shop there for some hasty repairs. There goes Gilles de Ferran there, just holding off Christian Fittipaldi. That is the battle for 4th position on board with Christian Fittipaldi to crest the rise across start-finish line. 28 laps in the books.
So still some way to go, 21 laps still to go as Christian Fittipaldi lines up fellow Brazilian Gilles de Ferran. And this is the battle for 4th place. And Christian Fittipaldi went out last week in Mid-Ohio with transmission problems. That was disappointing for him. But we've just heard that he may be getting a few problems with his ECU, with the engine management system. And that would be bad news. Maybe he's got water in the works, and you could just see there his hand coming off the steering wheel as if to say, what's going on here? And I wonder if he's just picked up a little bit of a problem, or perhaps he was just having a look down at the instrument display to see what's happening with the car. Christian Fittipaldi, though, has fought his way up remarkably well from that qualifying position of 18th. Now, on one of the other drivers that's unfortunately gone out of this race already, Margaret Johnston. Let's hear from him.
See, you're okay. You're another one of the non-survivors in today's wet race. What happened?
Well, Marty, we had problems on Friday to begin with, but I'm real proud of this team, Cole Crean. They got the car working real well yesterday morning. We couldn't improve our qualifying because of the rain yesterday afternoon. We struggled a little bit in the beginning of the race, but as it tracked right out, our car just got better and better. As we went down into turn number 5, everybody got log jammed on the inside. Jimmy made his one move, as we talked about in the drivers' meeting yesterday, to the middle, past Ray Hall. I went by by Junior and Ray Holland was on the outside of Jimmy, and as we got down into the corner, he moved to the far outside. I was looking at concrete or grass for the back of his car and decided to keep it off the wall, and unfortunately bent the front of the car. Real disappointment for our team, but we're looking forward to Vancouver in 2 weeks.
All right, we'll see you there.
So Parker Johnston, not a good weekend for him once again, as Mark Blundell continues to pull away up front. Well, does he pull away? Not really, because Zanardi has closed that gap in a little bit. This time around it was 1.1 seconds, and as they cross the line this time it's just 0.6 seconds. So Zanardi really has closed up the gap, and Mark Blundell can feel the pressure from the Italian, just as he did in Toronto some weeks back. On that occasion, Mark Blundell drove an absolutely superb race, controlled it from the front, and kept Zanardi behind him throughout the course of the race distance. But Zanardi here is looking very, very keen. And well, we've seen just how he's been able to get past some of the drivers like Maurizio Gugelmin, and Mark Blundell may have to defend a little bit more vigorously as the next few laps develop. Blundell leads. We've completed 30 laps. Zanardi second. Gugelmin is in third. De Ferran fourth. Fittipaldi is fifth. Scott Pruitt in sixth. Bobby Rahal running consistently in seventh place. Greg Moore is in eighth position. Ninth place for Al Unser Jr. up there in the points. Brian Herter in a good 10th place. And remember, Brian Herter's going well on fuel because he came in for an extra splash of fuel earlier on. Richie Hearn is up in the points. He's doing a fine job in 11th place. And Adrian Fernandez is the last in a points scoring place at the moment. He's in 12th position. Behind him is Fangio, Vassar, Jourdain, Walter Sales and PJ Jones. But those last three are quite a long way back now.
And lap times beginning to tumble. The last 3 laps after we went green, the first lap was a 53.5 by Mark Blundell and a 51.0. Last time around 48.7. Pole time, of course, was a 42.3, so still some way away from that, but the pace is quickening.
News that Michel Jourdain has pulled off the track, so I just mentioned him down there on the list in 15th, but he's not going to be there for very much longer because he's now pulled off to the side of the track. Up comes Mark Blundell, this steep climb to cross the line once more, and still it's the Pac West Reynard Mercedes with Firestone tyres that leads from another Reynard, this one with Honda power, and the same Firestone tyres being driven by Italian Alex Zanardi, the points leader, and the man who most people now expect to take the championship in the remaining races. Just another 3 races to go after this one, so Zanardi in absolutely great shape here as he hounds Mark Blundell.
Mögen Sie es gerne romantisch? Oder lieber knallhart? Oder lachen Sie einfach gern? Dann müssen Sie auch diese Nummer wählen. 080 55 300.
Houston, wir haben ein Problem.
Ach was, denn nur bei Premiere gibt's das volle Programm. Und das heißt 30 Top-Filme jeden Monat. 080 55 300. Die ersten 2 Monate gibt's zum Preis von einem.
Ich bin begeistert.
Romantik, während du schläfst. Action, GoldenEye. Komödie, Ace Ventura, jetzt wird's wild. Wenn Sie jetzt anrufen, liefert Ihnen der Hermes Versand das Premiere-Paket schon morgen Abend kostenlos und bequem nach Hause. Anrufen 080 55 300.
Back to the PPG Kart World Series with Valvoline Motor Oil.
Close as ever as they come down to turn 5. This is where he made the move on Gugelmin, but he's being a little more cautious here this time with Blundell, and he wasn't really close enough. He didn't get the draft along that previous straight to really make the move on Blundell.
Amazing how these two have been to the forefront all these recent races, isn't it? Of course, a fabulous battle between these two in Toronto just 3 or 4 weeks ago, and also at the US 500 as well. So these two are the guys that are on a hot streak. Blundell had a bit of a problem last weekend in Mid-Ohio, certainly, but he and Zanardi really are taking some beating this afternoon. They're the people out in front of the race. Gugelmin following them, but we've got, what, 31 laps in the books now, 19 to go. It's going to be tight. We're going to have to keep a close eye on the time and also the fuel.
got to be careful here. They had to get on the wet bit to get past Charlie Neerberg. Tyres get a bit damp, but there's time for them to dry off again as they come down into Canada corner, and no great problems for either Blundell or Zanardi. And Zanardi maintains the chase of the Englishman, who is doing such a great job in only his second season of this championship. Came in with PacWest last year after an up and down time in Formula 1, never really getting into the right car at the right time. He drove for McLaren, of course, Mark Blundell, but it was one of the low points really for McLaren the year that Nigel Mansell was slated to drive the car. Then it all fell apart. Blundell took up the role and ran with it and did a fine job, but I think McLaren would admit that that year's car was certainly not one of their best. Became a very popular member of the team, though, Mark Blundell. You talk to any of the McLaren guys, they really enjoyed working with him that year. And since he's come over to America, a quieter year last year, and of course a very dramatic year after that horrible accident in Rio, he's come back so well this season, and the PacWest team have done such a fine job. And here he is leading again after winning 2 races so far this year. Just talking to some of the other engineers, Jeremy, there's a lot of respect, particularly for the engineering on suspension side of the PacWest team. They've done a lot of work on the dampers, particularly over the course of the year, and they reckon that a lot of their edge that they've developed in recent times has come from that suspension engineering.
That's true. Tim Neff is the shock absorber expert on that team. He's working with Jim Hamilton, a chassis expert who came in from All-American Races over winter. Actually started off this season working as a race engineer with Mark Blundell. And those two didn't really gel in that position. But since Mark has moved across with Alan McDonald, who's ex of TWR Arrows Formula 1, taking over the position as race engineer for Mark Blundell, it's turned him around. And the whole team is really meshed well together. Everybody is in the right positions and just shuffling people around until they get them in the positions to which they are best able to use their own particular skills.
And the whole package has really come together this year. The Mercedes-Benz engine is absolutely superb. They've had a lot of wins already this year, and the drivability of the engine an important factor. And I know, Jeremy, when you were watching on part of the circuit earlier on over the weekend, you had a fairly graphic experience of that, with the way that Zanardi was having to make up for the lack of drivability from the Honda.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Down at the carousel there, very, very fast corner. They're going through that corner in 5th gear at well over 135, 140 miles an hour. And what was interesting to me, that most drivers are short shifting going into that corner, short shifting into 5th gear, not using the full revs in 4th. But Zanardi was doing about, well, I'd say 25%, 20% into that corner and shifting under full throttle halfway around the corner. Not something the textbooks would teach you to do, but it certainly worked for Alex Zanardi.
Yes, but as you say, maybe part of the reason he has to do that is because the Honda engine not putting quite so well from lower down in the rev range. And that, I think, really is part of the advantage that we've seen from Mercedes this year, as well as their remarkable fuel economy. And there, Greg Moore is a man who's enjoyed some of the fuel economy that the Mercedes engine has been giving this year, because certainly one of his wins, the Milwaukee win, came very much down to an efficient engine. And at this point, Greg Moore running in 8th place. Alonso Jr. is running in 9th, just behind him. Brian Herter in 10th place. Having said that, there's still very little to choose between the different power units used here.
You talk about Herter there in 10th place. He was closing on Alonso Jr. The last couple of laps. He's actually had more of a trouble keeping Richie Hearn behind him. He's actually fallen back a little bit from Alonso Jr. There is Bobby Rahal under pressure from Greg Moore.
Yeah, Greg Moore's really looking at the inside this time into Canada corner and down on the debris bit. Oh, he can't hold it. It was so dangerous to go on the wet bit down there on the inside. Oh, Greg, another championship contender, throws away his chances here as Alex Zanardi runs in 2nd place. Greg Moore, who was running in the championship in 4th position, who finished in 2nd place last time out in Mid-Ohio, he went for the move on the inside. It was too slippery to make the move last, and Greg Moore has thrown away his chances of scoring well here today. Meanwhile, Alonso Jr. comes into the pits. Let's take another look at that. It was always going to be a risky maneuver. You could see how much wetter it was on the inside. Bobby Rahal was able to just say, right, thank you very much, drive past him, and Greg threw it away.
He did, didn't he? Uncharacteristic mistake, I think you'd have to say, for the young Canadian driver. He's not made too many mistakes this year, but that was certainly one, and boy, is that a costly error by Greg Moore.
It is. It really only takes Gilles de Ferran now to make a mistake, and Alex Zanardi will have seen all of his major rivals get something wrong here today. There it was. You could see very clearly how much wetter the line on the inside was from that ahead shot, and there just wasn't the grip there to be able to go down on the inside, and Greg Moore soon found that out, didn't he? There he is. They've gone full course yellow to get that car out of the way, so Mark Blundell leads them round, but it's under full course yellow now, and everybody will close up together again.
Yeah, they'll be coming around quickly now. They won't want to lose any time under yellow. Certainly a couple of people at the tail end of the lap were able to come into the pits and make their pit stops. There goes the Gale crane to get Greg Moore's car out of the way. But these guys are at full speed. They're coming around to, well, we'll see whether they have to make pit stops or not. They've had quite a few full course cautions recently, and it's going to be interesting to see whether they come into the pits or not.
Yeah, I think they are, Jeremy. I think they're going to come in on, this should be their final stop. So they should be able to make it all the way through the rest of the race. Now you see how fast they come up that pit lane entry. That's when they've got to be careful to hit the brakes in time to get down to the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Now, Zanardi's crew has been magnificent so far this weekend. He closed up quite a lot of Mark Blundell, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Now, a little slow, and he wasn't quite in the right place there, Mark. It's only a fuel stop, no tyres going on, only fuel. Now, that's interesting to see. They made a little front wing change, but is it going to be the Ganassi car of Alex Zanardi, or is it going to be Mark Blundell's car? It's difficult to see from our vantage point in the pit lane. There goes Zanardi. Where is Blundell? Blundell is behind Zanardi. Zanardi gets out ahead of Mark Blundell, and the Ganassi team have done it again. They've done it several times this year. They did it at Long Beach when they got out ahead of Gilles de Ferran, and once again the champion team gets their driver out in front, and Mark Blundell, well, that's the way it goes. He's now going to have to race for position, and is he going to be able to find a way past the Italian who has been hounding him in the recent laps? Fantastic performance once again from Ganassi. As Greg Moore begins to set off back to the pits, the man who caused this last yellow. So the situation in the pits, Jimmy Vasser into the pit lane now as well, and he's getting his fuel, etc., as he comes back out onto the circuit. And Jeremy, we've had quite a few yellow flag periods. Can we see how many it is?
6, I think. It's
6.
Way too many, that's for sure.
Yes, that's right. Seems to have been yellow flag after yellow flag in this race. I suppose considering the conditions, not a great surprise. Difficult circuit. We always knew if it was going to be a wet race here that we were going to get a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think a couple of them are perhaps a little bit trigger happy as well with calling the cautions, but certainly 6 cautions, that's rather too many for this sort of race.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see that. They have run races here in the past without any cautions at all, actually. It's not for a little while, having said that, but it has been known not to have a yellow flag at all. Now, we're going to get a green flag next time round, apparently, so that's good news. And, of course, we then get to see the battle between Zanardi and Blundell. 15 laps to go. Not that long, although don't forget it's a 4-mile lap, so that's still quite a long way to go in this race. Zanardi second, Gutem in third, de Ferran in fourth, Fittipaldi in fifth, ahead of Pruitt and Rahal. Let's just check, in fact, sorry, Zanardi ahead of Blundell. Just check that that'll be the same when they come round, because of the pit stops, that order that's up on our screens at the moment may have changed around a little bit. So we'll check that when they come through. We're going to take another look at what happened in the pits then, as the two teams did battle, the Pac West crew versus the Ganassi crew. There was the Pac West crew. They got Mark out, and as he accelerated away down to the bottom of the screen, Zanardi just getting out of the Ganassi pit further down there, and that's where the time was lost. So disappointment. Now, of course, I suppose you could ask, did they put as much fuel in as Blundell, or did they take a little gamble, perhaps put a little less fuel in? Difficult for us to know. We can't really tell from up here, but I would say that that was probably just an example of Ganassi's slightly quicker crew.
Yeah, and Zanardi coming very, very quickly into the pits. As they were coming up the hill, there was certainly an appreciable gap between the two, but by the time they got to the fuel, to the blend line, I should say, where the pit lane speed limit comes into effect, Zanardi was tight up behind Blundell, and then the crew took over from there.
It's interesting that that we got the green flag going there. It's interesting that Zanardi. Oh, we've got Nierberg. Nierberg's gone over. Oh, no, it's Meyer. Arndt Meyer seems to have gone over the barrier or through the barrier down at the last corner. I don't know quite how that's happened. That's on the restart. Meanwhile, Brian Herter's getting up over the curb in his attempts to move up through the order. He survives it just about, but gets back on the track and loses a few places. Loses one to teammate Bobby Rahal. Alanson Jr. side by side with Brian Herter. Can't hold him off. Herter has to lose that place, and in fact loses the place to Richie Hearn as well as they go through. Zanardi leads, Blundell second, Gugelmin third, De Ferran fourth, and Fittipaldi in fifth position. And let's see if we can find out exactly what happened. We've got a replay coming up here. Watch out for Arndt Meyer's car. He was at the back of the field. Now there he goes, made a mistake on his own by the looks of things. Went across the grass, very wet, slippery grass, hit the barrier, went straight over the top of that layer of Armco. I think there's just 2 layers of Armco there, over the other side, and came remarkably close to that netting with the spectators watching from just the other side. So that was a very nasty incident there for Arndt Meyer.
Yeah, that's what you want to see at all. It's certainly there he goes, Arndt Meyer backwards into the fence. You can see the fence, the Armco barrier giving way. It's old Armco barrier here at Road America, and awfully close to those spectators. Not good at all, but the good news is, I suppose, that his car is certainly not in any danger for the people on the race course, and with no more caution. So there goes Alex Zanardi, a tremendous restart. He's already pulled away quite a bit from Mark Blundell.
Yeah, it's not looking so good for Blundell. Remember, Zanardi was hounding Blundell in the latter part before we got the last yellow flag, and now he's really putting his pace to good use. Let's see what the lap time is. Of course, it was from a start behind the pace car, but even so, they were pretty much flat out as they came up the hill. It's a 1 minute 48.030, 1 minute 49.391 for Blundell, and a 1 minute 51 for Gugelmin, a lot slower on that opening lap. And the rest of them go through there. Fourth place for De Ferran, fifth place for Fittipaldi, sixth place for Pruitt, then seventh now Alanson Jr. And that's a result of, again, some good work from Penske in the pits. They've got him up to seventh now. Bobby Rahal's dropped to eighth, Richie Hearn ninth, Jimmy Vasser 10th, Brian Herter 11th, and Adrian Fernandez holding on to that final point scoring place in 12th at the moment. Keep an eye out for Richie Hearn, though. This could be one of his best results of the season, running there in 9th position in the recalcitrant Lola, a car he struggled with all year long in his rookie season. Well, not quite, but it's really his first full season in the kart series. And Richie Hearn doing a fine job today.
Very much so. Just 3 races last year. He had a 10th place actually on his debut in Long Beach with a year-old Reynard, that was in 1996, and doing fine work this year for John Della Penna's team, the Ralph's Food for Less Budweiser car, Lola Ford Cosworth and Goodyear tires on that car. And there we are watching Alanson Jr. He's got a sniff of a good result here as he's moved up. He's moved up as other people have made mistakes, is basically what it boils down to. But he's certainly running well and tracking onto the rear there of Raoul Boisel. Meanwhile, up at the front, Mark Blundell has managed to reduce that gap significantly to Alex Zanardi.
He has, hasn't he? I'm amazed that Blundell really has dialed it in and closed up to Zanardi. I say amazed simply because in the part before the stop, it looked as though Zanardi was the slightly quicker of the two, but perhaps wasn't going to get the chance to get past Blundell. But now it looks as though Mark is slightly the quicker of the two. Unless Zanardi made a mistake on that last lap, across the line they go, and this time as they complete 38 laps, a 1 minute 50.2 from Zanardi, a 1 minute 48.6 from Mark Blundell. So that really was a storming lap from the British driver, and he is not going to let go of a possible victory here. Remember, Blundell is now lying in 10th place in the championship. He's not really in with a shout of winning the title when you consider that he's on 72 points and Zanardi's on virtually double that, well, over double that. He's on 148 points. So Mark Blundell has no realistic chance of the title, but he does have a realistic chance of a third victory.
You know, if Zanardi does the same as Michael Andretti and Greg Moore, maybe he will have a shot at the title. But he needs to keep it on the racetrack, and Alex Zanardi, that's certainly foremost in his mind. We know his last lap around, 1 minute 50.248. He must have made a mistake somewhere around that lap, out of the view of the cameras, and now he's going to try and eke out that margin once again.
So far they're keeping fairly constant. You can see Mark's trying pretty hard though, late on the brakes, and I tell you what, I was watching out on circuit a few places on Friday. Mark Blundell was as late as anybody on the brakes, down into both Canada corner and into turn number 1. He had that car very deep into the corners before he was on the brakes, looking very confident with its behaviour under braking, and that's certainly making up some ground for him.
On your back, on your front, in the tuck, with a twist. synchronized, or solo. Whichever way you like it, you'll love it in Seville. And don't forget a towel. The European Swimming Championships, today, 16:45 CET, 15:45 UK, live on Eurosport. With Speedo. Back to the PPG World Series with
Husqvarna, Forest and Garden Products.
Again, that view back from the onboard camera. Now there's the gap that you can see to Maurizio Gugelmin, and then to Gilles de Ferran and Christian Fittipaldi. This little group of cars seems to be maintaining a fairly even distance at the moment.
Yeah, Bobby Rahal there looking to the inside of Alan Jr. Last couple of laps, he's certainly closed in a little bit there. And he's now right on the tail of Alan Jr. Jr. braking late down there into turn 5, able to maintain that advantage up the hill to turn 6. Left-handed there. There is Gilles de Ferran through turn 8. Christian Fittipaldi, Scott Pruitt, and there is the battle behind them. Alan Jr. and Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, two experienced campaigners, if ever there were any.
Yeah, the two most experienced campaigners on the circuit. Both had well over 200 starts each, and they have been around this circuit for 13 years or so, and they know every inch of this racetrack.
Alonso Jr. lying down in 13th place in the championship. In fact, Bobby Rahal's running in 12th place, and so there's not much to choose between their seasons so far. There's only 3 points separating them in the series, so these points are actually quite important to both of them.
Yeah, they are. Every point is crucial at this stage in the proceedings. They want to get up amongst the top 10, get amongst the PPG points money at the end of the season. Here come the two leaders flashing past us. That's 43 laps in the books for them. So there is, well, what, quarter of a mile back in turn 14, Al Unser Jr. with Bobby Rahal chasing after him.
So they come up to complete another lap. The leader's already gone through, of course. Alex Zanardi did a 1:46.3 on the last lap, but again, Blundell closed the gap. He did a 1:45.892 as Rahal gets as close as you'd like to the back of Al Unser Jr.'s car. And Blundell was just 0.6 of a second behind Zanardi last time round again. So again, we're seeing this gap constantly changing. Nierberg gets out of the way, thankfully, and Unser and Rahal go through safely. But that battle for the lead is not over yet, with 6.5 laps, shall we say, still to go. Rahal now beginning to mount a greater challenge on Al Unser Jr. He's got the outside line, just drives round the outside of Little Al. He made that look so easy, just seemed to have greater line speed and made the best advantage of it. Bobby Rahal, therefore, has moved up to 7th.
Pretty racy, wasn't it? Rahal, a great run last weekend up at his home circuit at Mid-Ohio, and moving up again here now up to 7th place ahead of Al Unser Jr.
So Junior has to settle back there a little bit. The car still not working well on the road courses. What a great car it was on the oval tracks for Paul Tracy earlier in the year, but it just doesn't seem to work when you have a combination of corners as you have here in Road America. And it's a bit of a surprise, really, because they usually have a good car set up for this racetrack. Nearly always gone well in the past here, but that doesn't seem to be the case this weekend. And of course, we lost Paul Tracy right at the beginning of this race when he was flipped upside down in an incident with Gualter Sales. No chance to score. Now there we're looking at Richie Hearn. We mentioned him earlier, but he's dropped back a couple of places. He's now down to 11th. He was running as high as 9th at one stage.
He's got passed by both Jimmy Vasser and Brian Herter these last few laps, and actually Herter also has moved past Vasser, so Herter is now in 9th place, Vasser is 10th, and there is Richie Hearn, 11th place for John Della Penna's team.
Yeah, good to see going well, and we switch now to Gilles de Ferran, who's running in 4th position. And after one of the most consistent runs of the championship, Gilles de Ferran a little disappointed. Lost a couple of potential places last weekend in Mid-Ohio when he had a spin in the pit lane. It was a bit of a tangle when Greg Moore came out of the pits at much the same time as he did, and Gilles ended up finishing down in 6th place, which was a shame because he's had a good run of podium finishes in recent times. But once again, he's doing the job here. He's the first of the Goodyear runners. And just in the top left-hand corner of the screen, you can see if they finish where they are now, Zanardi would be up with a 40-point lead over de Ferran, who would move ahead of Tracy in the points. So still a very important 4th place at the moment, this, for Gilles de Ferran. We're just coming back to the tyre war, and if Zanardi, Blundell or Gugelmin win today, Jeremy, it will actually be the first time that Firestone have won on this circuit since they came back into the series.
It's true, it's certainly been a Goodyear racetrack in the past, but Here we are, fast zones on the first place car, the second place car and the third place car. So Gilles de Ferran in fourth, the best of the Goodyear runners this afternoon as we're on board there with Christian Fittipaldi.
Yeah, and in fact Firestone have quite a record. They've won on all of the road and street courses this year, so it's been looking very good for Firestone. Their only downside has perhaps been on the 1 mile ovals with the Penske and the Goodyear, but Firestone have definitely had the edge in most of the racing this year. Just taking a look at who's watching Christian Fittipaldi back in Brazil, and he's got 10 to 15 relatives watching on SBT, and let me tell you that the Brazilian audience for the car series is immense. They get up to 10 million people watching down there in Brazil, and if there's a Brazilian up in the top 3, then they can see an immediate jump in the viewing figures, and we've got a Brazilian up there. It's Maurizio Gugelmin. He's running in 3rd place, so I think there'll be lots and lots of people watching it down in Brazil this afternoon.
They will indeed. 3rd, 4th and 5th, all Brazilians, Gugelmin, de Ferran and Christian Fittipaldi. So we've had a couple of them out of the race tangling together. Of course, Ribeiro and Boisel tangling, and they're out of the race. But these 3 young men upholding the Brazilian honour in their stead.
Yeah, doing a fantastic job. And, well, we've got an Italian up front, an Englishman in 2nd place, Brazilians then 3rd, 4th and 5th. Top American at the moment is Scott Pruitt, who's running in 6th ahead of a bunch of Americans, actually. Rahal, Unser, Herter, Vassar, Hearn, and then the next non-American is this man, Adrian Fernandez, who's running in 12th place. He's just a fraction ahead of Juan Fangio, and this is a good little battle that's going on for the final point here. The Lola of Adrian Fernandez with a Honda engine, and he's up against the Toyota of Juan Fangio. Certainly do seem to have got some better reliability out of the Toyota motors. All 3 of the cars are still in the race so far. There we are, there's who's watching Adrian back home. 75 relatives. Well, there you are, it is Mexico, I suppose. And watching on TV Azteca, and 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon for them. Not much different, of course, to the time that we're on here in Wisconsin.
Well, it should have been 2:30 in the afternoon, a couple of hours later now, in actual fact, with the delay of this race.
Yes, that's right. There's up front still Zanardi. Blundell still chasing him. 1 second the gap as they cross the line. Under 4 laps to go now as Alex Zanardi continues his winning ways so far. But still a little way to go. 4 laps of this track is still 16 miles. Still fuel to think about, although they should be okay on the fuel consumption. Being pushed hard, of course, by Mark Blundell throughout this race. And it's good to see Blundell has not backed off in his chase. He's kept the pressure up every single lap since the last green flag, since he lost the lead under the pit stops when Zanardi's team just turned him around that fraction faster. But Blundell has just maintained the pressure, and Zanardi's had to keep pushing as hard as he can to stay ahead. Meanwhile, they've pulled out a 6-second lead over Maurizio Gugelmin in 3rd.
Yeah, driving just brilliant. There is Jimmy Vassar. He's had some problems this afternoon. He's back in 10th place in is the defending PPG Cup champion, so certainly not what he wanted this afternoon. A little tangle there with Parker Johnson. We heard Parker's side of the incident. We haven't yet heard Jimmy's, of course.
No, it may be another story. There usually are 2 fairly diverse stories in a case like that. And Parker was moaning a little bit that Vassar had moved more than once across the track. I'm sure Vassar would have said, well, I was only taking my line for the corner. What do you expect? And they can have a little argument about that afterwards. But Jimmy's still running there in 10th place. They'll be disappointed with that after seeing teammate Alex Zanardi being in such strong form at the top end of the field. Jimmy's having a bit of an up and down season. Still, though, one of the most consistent drivers out there, both in qualifying and in racing. And although he may not quite have had the pace that Alex Zanardi has shown this year, he's still bringing the car home, which is the important thing.
That's what it's all about in this sport. And there is Jimmy Vassar once again. Certainly last lap around there, 43.672. Alex Zanardi, the fastest race lap so far. He extended his advantage over Mark Blundell to just over 2 seconds. And we've only got 3 laps to go. That's going to be a very tall order indeed.
Yes, it looks as though Zanardi is enjoying himself up front and just relishing in the opportunity to drive this 4-mile Road America circuit. in the style that he wants to. He was like Mark. They both were talking about it in the press conference on Friday and saying how it reminded them of Spa, how difficult it is to get the perfect lap here because there's so many corners, it's such a long way around. You can do half the lap and think, yeah, I'm on a really good lap, and it only takes one little slip on one corner to throw away the whole 4 miles.
Yeah, you lose a lot of momentum on these long straightaways too. There is Jimmy Vasser setting his heights on Brian Herdebit. One little slip in, you lose all that momentum down these long straights. 3 different parts on this track. The cars reach over 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, it really is a Formula One style track, this one. And I don't think there'd be a Formula One driver out there who wouldn't love to have a run around this track. Of course, Jacques Villeneuve, twice winner on this circuit, and he'll be looking forward to the Spa track next week. And he likened the Spa track to this place when and Mark Blundell's in trouble. I do not believe it. Mark Blundell is in trouble. He's slowed down to the side of the track. And oh no, after such a strong run in second position, smoke from the back of the car. I thought I saw a lick of flame from the rear. Yes, there is. And Mark Blundell's tremendous drive here at Road America comes to a smoky conclusion. What a disappointment when it looked as though he was heading for a fine second place. He's trying to get the marshals to come and put the fire out before it does any more damage.
Yeah, he's going back on board there just to press the onboard extinguisher, try and get that little conflagration under control. But what a shame for Mark Blundell. A beautiful drive this afternoon, and that certainly left Alex Zanardi well in the clear. You can see not just a lick of flame, was it? That's a fairly major blow-up. And, you know, the Mercedes-Benz engine, Ilmor Engineering, last year, of course, they had the same problem just about 100 yards further on the track at the most, with the race leader on that occasion, Alan Jr. So not quite so dramatic for them. He was in second place this time around, so it's better been in second than in first when you blow up in the final corner almost for Alan Jr. last year. Heartbreak for him, and the same feeling for poor Mark Blundell. What a great drive this afternoon.
Oh, that is so disappointing, isn't it? And there he is, crestfallen by the side of his car. Cannot believe it. He couldn't have done any better, really. I mean, got let down by the team a little bit, I suppose, in that he was out behind Zanardi after that last stop, but he kept the pressure on Zanardi all the way through the latter part of this race. Kept it up there, and I think Zanardi will be as disappointed as anybody. He must have enjoyed the battle with Mark Blundell here today. Zanardi loves his racing. He's a true racer, has a passion for the sport, just loves it, enjoys himself all the time. He'll have relished the battle that he had with Mark Blundell today, and I think he'll be as gutted as anybody to see him pull off at the side.
About that gutted, but he'd be pretty happy with himself. He's certainly driven beautifully this afternoon himself. He'd be thrilled with the pit crew. Rob Hill and co, just tremendous work. There is Jim Swintow with the white flag. 1 lap to go, just 4 miles for Alex Zanardi.
Here he goes then, Alex Zanardi, the championship leader already, and he's going to further extend his championship lead after a superb drive here this afternoon. Pac West, hopefully, touch wood, will still pick up points for second place, courtesy of Maurizio Gugelmin. And what it will do is give Gilles de Ferran a few more points for moving him up into third place in the table. And that will, of course, mean that Gilles de Ferran moves up to second place in the championship, moving ahead of Paul Tracy. So that's good news for Gilles de Ferran, Mark Blundell's demise, but still a sad way for it to happen. Fittipaldi's now moved up to 4th, Scott Pruitt up to 5th, and Bobby Rahal is now in 6th place. But let's just enjoy this final lap with the Italian, who really is the master of the art in the kart series at the moment, isn't he? He's just driven so superbly over the last few weekends. Victory in the US 500 at Michigan, victory on a completely different kind of track in mid-Ohio, and then victory here at Road America by the looks of things, a more similar circuit to what he's used to from Europe, but he's won on every kind of track in the kart series this year, on street track, on oval, and on normal road course. And Alex Zanardi is proving to be a real star over here in America. Here he comes down towards the final few corners in front of the crowd down at Canada Corner. They'll be giving him a great cheer as he goes past. You know, he was on American TV just a few days ago. He was on the TV Food Network cooking his favorite pasta dish. That's how much of an American he's becoming. He's even appearing in primetime TV shows. And here he comes to complete the final lap and win his 4th race of the season, his 5th race rather of the season. Win number 5 for Alex Zanardi. He comes up the cross-checkered flag. Zanardi takes victory. Another dominant performance, and the Ganassi team are heading for their 2nd championship. Brian Herter is off at the side of the road. He was running in 9th place. What has happened to Brian Herter? Surely not another disaster in this race full of drama.
Yeah, he'd been struggling the last few nights. I don't know what it was. He'd slipped back behind Jimmy Vasser and actually fallen quite a long way behind. But there is the Target Chip Ganassi crew. Jubilation there. And once again, an example of how teamwork is so crucial in the PPG Kart World Series. It's the team that won this race today every bit as much as Alex Zanardi. They prepared a perfect race car for him. He drove the wheels off the thing, and the pit crew was magnificent. 2 passes, crucial passes position in the pits, and Alex Zanardi did the rest.
Yeah, fantastic performance. Great disappointment for Mark Blundell, and disappointment. Here he goes. Look, he's doing the donuts again. Now, I thought he was going to get into trouble if he did those again, but he just can't help himself, can he? Down there at turn 5, good crowd up on the bankings, and that is wonderful, isn't it? He really does love it, and it's great to see a driver celebrating and enjoying himself, a little bit like Michael Schumacher does in Formula 1. There's never any hiding of the delight in winning a motor race.
No, I'll tell you what, as that's happening there, the 2 cars came past here. Gualter Salas and PJ Jones in a battle for position. Actually, is 13th place, inches apart, those 2 drivers were as they came across start-finish line. But there is Alex Zanardi. He is the hero of the moment. Another brilliant drive by the Italian driver, a commanding lead. He now holds in the PPG Kart World Series Championship. Just 3 races to go.
Which driver is currently leading the Formula 1 World Championship? Play and win 5 video game stations, plus 2 motorsport games each. Runners-up will receive a Eurosport t-shirt. Now. And good luck. Speed World, Monday, 2000 CET, 1900 UK on Eurosport. With K&N Formula 1 air filters for your car. Back to the PPG Kart World Series with Valvoline Motor Oil.
Again, in victory lane, it's become a familiar scene. Alex Zanardi enjoying the jubilation that goes along with a tremendous run now that's seen him win 4 of the last 5 and 5 on the year. They didn't want him to spin donuts, the kart officials. The crew, all of them got donuts in hand. Alex has got one here now. They're going to enjoy this moment one way or another. And a donut salute here as he was out there on the cool-down lap. This fun-loving Italian has a good time no matter where he is in the racetrack. Why not with the success? Alex saluting his crew. Tell us about this one and how tough was it to be patient today to not make a mistake?
It was very difficult, Gary. Sorry, I know it's not a good manner to talk with your master, but we'll
forgive you this time. Huh?
Okay. Well, I did some mistakes, and fortunately enough, I was able to come back all the time. I think we won the race in the pits today. We passed both guys into the pits, and I mean, I'm expecting this or something more from my boys. They're terrific.
That last pit stop was under 11 seconds. Blundell had his service complete, was closing on pit road, and then suddenly there you were with the advantage. Must have been a great feeling to look in your mirror and see him.
Well, I don't know whether that decision was took from Chip or who on the Target Chip Ganassi Racing, but they decided to leave me out with the same set of tire. Firestone has gave us such a tire that we can do the whole race, and they're probably good for Vancouver as well. So we didn't change tire, we just put fuel in, and that's how we beat Mark. But hey, the motor was pushing very well, you know, so I'm very happy. I mean, Honda is pushing hard, Firestone is pushing hard, Target Ganassi Racing is pushing hard. I do my part.
And there you are with a chance now to wrap up a championship at Vancouver, the next race in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I don't want to think about that, but anyways, it's good.
It's good, yes indeed. Marty Reed?
Yes, we're over here with Mo Gugelman, who's putting on a jacket. Go ahead if you need to button it up, because I know it's getting kind of damp and very breezy for you. So close again, second place. Take us through, were you having heart failure when you saw Blundell go up, thinking maybe it might happen to you too?
Got my concern. I had a problem in qualifying. Actually, on time on Friday, I had a problem, but unfortunately happened to him this time. I was running very hard in the beginning, and the car was running well for a few laps, but then I started losing traction, and I couldn't really run with those guys, either Zanardi or Mark. But in the end, I just got a lucky break. It was unfortunate for Mark.
As far as this race, though, I mean, are you getting to the point where you are wondering if you're ever going to get that victory?
You bet I'm going to get it. Just keep working up there. We got pole and we got second today. We didn't quite have the car for the win, but we keep hammering up there. We're going to get one.
All right, Mo Gulgerman, second place. Bob?
So Maurizio Gugelmin taking that fine second position, but what a shame to lose Mark Blundell in the closing stages. There you are, Zanardi the winner from Gugelmin, De Ferran, Fittipaldi next up from Pruitt and Rahal, then Unser heading up the next list from Vassar, Hearn, Fangio up in 10th place. Great performance from Fangio, ahead of Herta Fernandez, and they were the last point scorers. There you are, 16th place for Mark Blundell, classified as in the end after the engine failed, and so 3 laps down on the winner in the end. But some more disappointments for the likes of Paul Tracy, Michael Andretti and Dario Franchitti today. There is the points table, and some 38 points in fact ahead of Gilles de Ferran. For Alex Zanardi, Paul Tracy moves back to 3rd place in the series now. Greg Moore didn't score, Michael Andretti didn't score today, but Scott Pruitt did score, and he has moved himself into 6th place in the table. But things are looking great for Alex Zanardi as the donut celebration continues, and with just 3 races to go on the streets of Vancouver, on the racetrack at Laguna Seca where he took a dramatic win last year, and on the super speedway in Fontana, surely nobody can bet against this man for winning the championship. Hope you've enjoyed the program. Sorry about all the delays, the fact we couldn't quite bring it live to you, but from Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw, we'll see you in 2 weeks time in Vancouver. Join us then.